So I'm going to do a real quick Facebook Live because this is probably the end of the road as far as my Facebook Lives regarding anything that we've been resisting against. And who is we? The activist community that I used to belong to, that I don't belong to anymore. I realized it just hit me last night when I was sleeping. And I've been studying immunity and hyperimmunity and break-in immunity and what that means and what that looks like and why people are having so many issues with the things coming down the pipeline. And I'm like, oh my God, immunity, hyperimmunity is what leads to autoimmune disorders. That's what hyperimmunity is. Hyperimmunity also develops fertility. Hyperimmunity is the thing that sets you up to fail when the climate changes. The seasons change, the climate change. And if you don't have some kind of conditioning to develop antibodies, to be, a bit sick, if you have a lot of things going on in your system, the hyperimmunity that you inherited from your parents, that, yeah, you could be not only communicable, but you could die if you don't have the conditioning to develop antibodies when someone purposely breaks your immunity. But the season changing is what breaks immunity. And that's why the system kept recommending certain public health things during the cold and flu season, because your immunity would be broken because of the climate change or the barometric pressure rising or falling. And that's why spring allergy season is another type of breaking of immunity, because that's a change in the weather. And experiencing what I experienced the last 5 years, and I would feel like I was going to die every single time the climate changed. And sometimes the climate changed like in a span of like 2 weeks, not even giving me like 3 or 4 months to be like in relative equilibrium. Oh yeah, it was hell. Every single immunity pod I had in my body, everything that I took as far as reacting to disease, gave me a certain type of immunity that when the climate changed, I would have to pay the price. And that's why those who got operations and who are under some kind of therapy or drug therapy or, under the influence, you're getting sick a lot more often because the body's trying to release the demons. The body's trying to release all the mucus. That's why I'm seeing people who I've been watching, they had a recent operation in their arms and they had other things go on. I know my hair's kind of weird. And then they're sick, like they get sick and they get over it and they get sick again. They're like, where the hell is this coming from? Yeah, your body is trying to release. Your body is trying to release the damage and you're supposed to feed it. Okay? And no, they're taking Tylenol, they're taking all these different things, which is going to set them up again for another sickness. You have another chance to redirect, the next time you get sick. But there's still so much immunity in the body that when it does get triggered by something, you're going to have to face and pay the piper. Sometimes people don't understand that. Well, they don't understand that. And so when they get a heart attack or a stroke, I understand you're going to go to the doctor. They're going to do what they do, recommend what they recommend. And there you go. The train left the station. There's no coming back from that. I mean, there might be, but not really, because you know how painful it is? My arm finally feels better. Like yesterday when I was walking downstairs to the kitchen and I felt something shift in my arm, because it's been it's been crazy. And I'm like, it almost feels like someone, like a chiropractor did an adjustment to my arm. And it was like an invisible chiropractor just out of nowhere did something. And I'm like, ow. And I just said, ow, just like that. And then, I went to sleep yesterday. I had 2 pork chops yesterday in the morning, 8 o'clock. And I didn't eat anything for the rest of the day except for maybe some cheese and some roast beef and all that. And so my arm feels better. And so, what's going to happen as you're seeing legislation get pushed through systematically. You saw what's going on HB 1531 over there in Washington State. You know, all these parents having these kids hyperimmune, giving their kids elderberry syrup and all these different remedies, and their kids are gluten-free, milk-free, wheat-free. I mean, basically food-free. And they're doing away with potentially even the homeschooling system. And the system wants to therapize them. People are going to fucking lose their shit. They already are losing their shit. And this is where the war is going to come out. And I'm just going to say that was always the reason why the public health therapies were what they were. Because it took advantage of the immunity already broken in between each season, especially the harsher season in the Northeast. You had milder seasons in California. That's why the weather here affected me so aggressively when I first got here. I mean, I was so sick, it was insane. But I'd rather be so sick than deal with California bullshit. So I was willing to deal with that. And then we moved down to Florida during that same time, around the winter time. And I got sick again. Every single time we moved, I got sick. Because I had weak immunity. I've always had weak immunity. Every single time the season changed, I would be sick around November or September, October, November. And then it was the spring allergy season, and I'd be sick and taking Claritin, and my nose would be just pouring out, you know, all this mucus. Oh my gosh. So, you know, so when I posted that they passed that HB 1531 in Washington in one of the Diet Suddenly groups. And someone's like, what should I do? And there's nothing I can say to anyone what they should do. There's nothing to do. If you choose to have kids and they have to, because what happens is when you choose to have kids, they're going to have to assimilate to the strongest and weakest person in their cohort or in their classroom. And what happens is if people are not under the same type of therapy, so to speak, and they haven't been, you know, public health therapized, then when the seasons change and they have shit in their body that they have to release during that season change, and it's so aggressive, not only could kill them, yes, they're diseases that they hold inside that weren't taught how to build antibodies for, but yeah, they could be communicable. They could make you sick. And that's what they mean by, you know, so when someone was arguing the fact that, well, how is your VA XCC, whatever, gonna, you know, how is me being, you know, therapized gonna help you? It's because when you get it, you'll get sick, you'll deal with it, and then you'll be in relative equilibrium. Yeah, you might be INJURED'd, but you didn't die and you're not communicable. It's a crazy type of way of looking at it. And so, you know, there's no way I could tell someone how to respond to these things. There's no way. I don't know. There's no way. The way I responded to all the diseases that I held inside the last 6 years was miserable. And then the last little thing was this arm pain. Holy shit. And I responded with food. Rest, release. You know, I had to, there's 2 different activation points, one down there and one up here. And I made sure I got rid of everything without using enemas, without using jelly juice, without using any remedies. I drank milk when I needed to, but I didn't just drink milk to do waterfalls. I drank milk bound with bread and with peanut butter jelly sandwiches, with meat, milk, and cheese, and ice cream sandwiches, and pork. And people's like, oh yeah, they're having the mRNA, whatever, in the pork. And, you know, and that's fine. I don't care if they immunize my food. I really don't care. I'll process it out and take, you know, and assimilate what I have to. And that's pretty much how it's going to be. And I do this in the middle of the night, sometimes at 2 a.m, I'm blowing my nose like you would not believe. Because when I blow my nose, look at my hair. When I blow my nose, I feel the pressure up right here. Okay, and I feel things expanding and contracting. And I feel the pressure release too. And then all that gunk that's caught up in here, that's around my lymph nodes and my shoulders, and I know my shoulders been going through some stuff, then, it's all in my little napkin here. And that's what I mean by leveraging the pressure up here. And then sometimes I fart down there. And that's when the two systems, the two hemispheres are talking to each other. They're finally connected. And so, yeah, if you're going to have children, they're going to have to understand what it means to break immunity. Because immunity, when you think about it, immunity is deadly. Immunity leads to fertility, yeah. But it doesn't always mean fertility children. It could also mean disease and cancer. Immunity is like saying you're bypassing the accountability, the paying for the transgressions against your body. Okay? When people start aging out and they start contracting disease, that's their immunity being broken. When you get cancer, that's immunity being broken. When you get a cold, immunity broken. When you are sick, just like my arm, as if I was sick, that's immunity broken. I had to pay the piper for that, for whatever it is I voluntarily did back in 93. And if you've been on drugs, illicit drugs or prescription drugs or any kind of remedies like detoxes and everything, that's developing immunity, but you'll pay the piper for that. Imagine trying to pass all of that sand and that clay. I was passing that clay that I was drinking voluntarily for probably years, and it settled in different parts of the body. When you're taking all those different detoxes, that's an immunity that you're going to have to pay for. And if you don't, see, here's the thing, other people have gotten the Norplant and stuff, and it's been, since taken out. But they have no problem with it right now. Why? Because they didn't pay the piper. They didn't pay for all the transgressions that were birthed from that immunity, from that first mistake. That's why I say with the whole Vampire Diaries, when you make a decision, a choice, when something happens and you make a decision or a choice about what happened, and that includes getting a surgery, every single choice you make, every single decision you go, whatever road you go down, is based upon that first mistake. And so in the Vampire Diaries and Twilight and all the different vampire shows, if that one vampire is the head vampire and he's turned so many people, just like an MLM, when you're inviting people into your network, you kill off the lead vampire, every single vampire after it gets turned back or they don't survive. And so that's the same thing with, when your kids are undergoing operations or where they're getting heavily immunized through the therapies market, which is the cures market, the holistic market. Okay, they will have to pay the price for the sins of the father because they hold immunity passed down from mother to child, and they take on more immunity, and that immunity will bite them in the ass. That's why when you were watching Survivor and they gave people immunity and they thought it was a good thing, that's how they brainwashed you into thinking that immunity is a good thing. No, they did something that was wrong or they were voted off, but they had an immunity, clause that said the reason, so they were able to come back and not reap the consequences of what was originally the rules, that you would be kicked off the island if you violated rule A, B, C, and D. And so, that's why the theology is what it is, and the whole absolution through the medical system, absolution through the church, absolution through your friends and family, and through drugs and alcohol and sex and children and family, and absolution through fame and wealth and fortune. That's immunity absolution that one day, you'll pay for. Getting the operations, the Botox, the plastic surgery, all the things, all the trappings of wealth is a type of immunity that one day you'll pay for, because you know what it takes to keep up all of that? A lot. It'll take like your soul, so to speak. And so that's why you don't want to be famous. That's why you don't want to be rich and famous. You don't want a huge, huge family. You don't want all the things that people are so glorifying out there in the mainstream and in the alternative mainstream, because you'll pay for that. Sometimes you pay with your life, because your life is going to have to sustain all of that trappings of wealth. Your life. All your different lifelines that you could have recouped resources now go towards making sure all your friends are okay, making sure all your kids are okay, making sure all your pets are okay, making sure that your whole house is okay, making sure, that all the things that you're responsible for are okay. And then you become the human sacrifice. And that's why I say, if you cut down, scale down, stay home, stay safe, deal with, your breaking of immunity slowly but surely, eat food, release, rest, you might maybe, survive this transition, and you may not end up in a gulag like in El Salvador. But the absolution and the distraction and the immunity of activism, blaming the Jews, blaming Israel, blaming all these things, that was what the system gave you so you can channel your frustrations, channel your body breaking down, breaking immunity. And so while you're under the influence, doing all your operations, your drugs, and big families, and hanging out with people of like mind, you're not taking care of yourself. But you're still breaking down. Your immunity is breaking down, and you're blaming someone for your misery. Whether you're forcing yourself to watch atrocities from war, because that's what happens. War happens, people get fucking pissed. I get it. Did you die? If you didn't die, count your fucking blessings that you're the one that survived, regardless of who perpetrated whatever. It's very hard to get past when you think that your own parents, or you think your own government, or you think someone you knew had it in them to make life difficult for you or make you traumatized. Oh yeah, I believe me, I understand. It took me a while to get past a lot of fucking things. But did you die? You have the chance to redirect. But if you can't, then the system will allow you up to a certain point to blame someone and play the victim card until you can't anymore. And so, there's nothing I can do to get through to a lot of people on my Facebook, and I'm not going to try. But I want you to see what happens when immunity is broken. Look at your Facebook. And you're going to see people get really pissed off at legislation passed down. You're going to see a lot of people trip out. And if you have kids, that's what you signed up for. When you have an animal, and when you have children, and when you take on a dependent, whether it's a husband or a wife, you know what's going to be in the cards. You can't control your husband or wife's, characterization of things, and they will do what they do so they can survive whatever it is, and you can't force them to do anything either way. Unless, they become incompetent and under doctor's care and they can't speak, then you have to let the system come in and dictate what needs to happen. And when you have kids, you realize homeschooling's a joke, right? How are these kids going to understand how the world works when you homeschool them? And so if you want a strong nation, you got to have unification. You want a strong nation, you want America to be great again, so to speak, they have to be able to compete. We can't be producing these gluten-free, sugar-free, meat-free, milk-free, salt-free children out there. Why do you think the genetically modified had so many more ingredients? To break your immunity. Why do you think Europe had different ingredients than what America had? Because Europe has already had broken immunity. But America has been built up at such a level that we had so many immunities to almost everything. The food supply had to reflect the situation to break the immunity. And so when these kids are eating genetically modified and they're breaking up in hives, yeah, they finally broke your immunity so you can finally fucking, change and evolve like you're supposed to. Or you're going to have everyone become autistic. Is that what you want? But you don't have the luxury to see things from a bird's eye point of view. The CDC has the luxury to see things from the bird's eye point of view. The CDC and all the different, regulatory agencies see things because they collect reports. People document things, they send those reports in, and those reports get analyzed. And then they see an ongoing pattern here. And they're watching all of you on Facebook, telling, oh, look, my kids are gluten-free, milk-free, meat-free, vegan and vegetarian. They eat egg sandwiches. Oh, look, they broke their leg, they broke their arm. Yeah, they're falling apart. They're malnourished, highly immunized. And they're afraid of the VHCC and I don't fucking blame you. But what the fuck? You're supposed to evolve and change. There is no survival without evolving. That's the third law of thermodynamics. 0 Kelvin. When you have such a thick mucus blocking nutritional absorption and blocking an upgrade to your system, the body will collapse in on itself. It will eat itself alive. And in the meantime, you're sustaining parasites. And that's what these parents are doing, what they're doing to their kids, themselves. Yeah, it's pretty bad what's going on. We are in Babylon because you've not been conditioned to deal with sickness. You don't understand what it means to be sick. We have been trained that immunity is to be worshipped. Absolution is to be worshipped. And then you're looking at all these different witches on Facebook selling their witchcraft. My God, Jillian, that's